and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we are here with, oh shit, I forgot to ask, how do you pronounce your last name? But we're here with Scott DeLuzio.
You got it, yeah.
Good? Yeah? Oh,
you got
I'm great. And I didn't even ask. Guys, I normally ask the guests how to pronounce last names because I'm not the greatest at it.
I've gotten all sorts of different pronunciations on my last name, and I answer to just about all of them, so.
Well, I'm glad that I got it. Woohoo.
You got it.
So, Scott, how do you deal when shit gets real? And just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about my background. I am an Army veteran. I served for about 6 years in the Connecticut Army National Guard. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Gotten out of the military. I've written a book called Surviving Son, which talks about my time in Afghanistan and the loss of my brother, who also was serving in Afghanistan at the same time. And I also host a podcast called the Drive On Podcast, where we talk to veterans about the issues that they're facing and how to kind of overcome them, and the providers of services who offer services to veterans and try to help provide more options to the veterans who are out there who might be dealing with stuff on their own and not knowing how to navigate through all the issues that they're facing.
Very important thing to talk about and a great topic for a podcast.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, when I started it was, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing as far as podcasting. I was, basically, I bought a microphone and I was like, okay, I'll just figure this out as I go. But I knew that, the goal of it was I wanted to help out veterans. And what I found was that by talking to other vets who have struggled with something, and they've figured out their way through it, whatever it was, whether it was substance abuse or homelessness or any number of different things. By talking to those people, it lets the listeners know that they're not alone. If they're going through something similar, they're not alone in whatever their struggle is. But it also gives them a path to give a try to work their way out. So if we talk to this person and we say, hey, this is, X, Y, and Z, I did these different things, maybe one of those steps someone didn't even consider. And they're like, you know what, maybe I'll give this a try, and maybe that'll help them out too. So that's the goal, is to give hope to those people who are struggling.
Yeah, I feel like our podcasts are very similar, except for we're just general and not military specific, but we're all learning how to deal with what's happened, and we can all learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And that's one of the things I liked about your podcast was, it was very similar in that regard, that we're basically just trying to figure out life, and trying to get through,
trying to deal with the shit that gets real.
Yeah.
And it does get real.
Oh yeah.
And help other people get through it, because it's sometimes you need a little help.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
There's like a song about it with friends and stuff.
So why don't you talk to us about your time in the service? I know you were in the reserve.
When I joined the National Guard, I had wanted to join the military for a while. Back when 9/11 happened, I was in college, and I had considered just dropping out of college right then and there to just go and join the military, because I knew there was going to be some sort of military response to the attacks, and I wanted to be a part of it. My family growing up, it was a very patriotic family. There's videos of my brother and I singing the national anthem before we could even really get the words out, holding American flags and all that kind of stuff.
Aww.
So we grew up, looking up to the military and first responders and people like that, the same way a lot of other kids looked up to Michael Jordan and other, athletes and things like that. So, so we had a really deep respect for the military as we were growing up, and so I knew it wasn't just something that I could say, yeah, you know what, I'll give it a try, and if I don't like it, well, then I'll just walk away from it or whatever. So I decided to sleep on that decision when I was in college, whether or not I would drop out, and I decided that if I was already partway through college, and if I dropped out, I probably wasn't going to come back and pick it back up. So I said, I'll finish what I started here, and then I'll see what I feel like, after college. In 2004, my brother joined the Vermont Army National Guard. He's my younger brother, and so he joined first, actually. All of a sudden, like overnight, my little brother became one of these guys that we looked up to growing up, and so I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I was really proud and really, looking up to him now, whereas growing up, he kind of looked up to me being the older brother. And then in about a year later, I heard a report on the news saying that the military was struggling to meet their recruiting numbers. Like they didn't have enough people for the jobs that they had. And that started to piss me off. I was like, where are all these people from 9/11? Right after 9/11, people were willing to do anything, like move mountains to go, fight against this enemy who attacked us. Where are all those people?
Yeah.
And then I realized I am those people. Like I wanted to do that, and I still haven't done anything. And so I was like, well, okay, let's think of all the reasons why I shouldn't join the military. And all of them that I came up with were just excuses. They were BS excuses, and they were just, it was just crap. And so I said, okay, I'm young enough and I'm fit enough. I'm perfectly capable. So why not me? So I guess I'm going to join too. And oh yeah, by the way, if my little brother can do it, then I'm going to do it too. Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I came to that decision to join the military. And when I was in basic training, my brother was deployed to Iraq in 2006, early part of 2006. So that was nerve-wracking for us because that was a real rough time over where he was in Iraq. And it was difficult for my family too. My parents had both of their kids out of the house, both serving in the military at the same time for the first time. And that was tough. But I loved it. I really enjoyed the whole process. The training was hard, but it shaped me into a better, more confident version of myself. And I really enjoyed it for that. And then after like basic training, I came back, and for anyone who's not familiar with the National Guard or the reserves, we do training 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year. I mean, that's more or less that's what they sell you on, but it always ends up being a little bit more than that. But yeah, so the training, we went through all that kind of training. On occasion we get called up for state level emergencies or things like that, and but that was not very often while I was serving. And then so fast forward a little bit through that time period to 2010 or late 2009, and we get activated to go to Afghanistan. And so that was, at that point, I was married, had a newborn or a child on the way, and he was born just before we got deployed to Afghanistan. So fortunately, I was able to be there for that and get to be there to see him be born. But yeah, we were at that point we were training to go over to Afghanistan, and so that training took a couple months. But then in about, I want to say it was like February of 2010, that's when we ended up finally getting to Afghanistan. And so we were there, located on the Pakistan border, in an area called the Khyber Pass. And that area was where the majority of the NATO supplies would come through. A lot of people don't realize it, but Afghanistan being a landlocked country, there's no way you can get a cargo ship to Afghanistan. So the closest port is in Pakistan, and so all of our stuff would get offloaded in Pakistan and then driven on trucks through there. So part of our job was to secure that border area and make sure that those trucks had safe passage coming through that area. And the Pakistanis at the time, they were not too happy with Americans because there was a lot of drone strikes and that type of thing going on. So when we weren't there at the border, they tended to close the border down so that our supplies wouldn't be able to get into Afghanistan. So by us being there, it kind of was, not that we were going to go to war at Pakistan, but it was kind of a show of force that and they wouldn't necessarily close the border down quite as often when we were there. So we did that to try to keep the border open and our supplies flowing. But our mission there, we were infantrymen, so our job was the ground troops. We're on the front lines, fighting the war. So our mission took us off to other places as well, throughout the country, and so we'd fly in on helicopters to these remote villages where there were suspected Taliban activity going on, and we'd go through the villages. We work closely with the Afghan army and tried to train them, which at times was like herding cats. But the thing was, with them, there's some people there who really were focused and really wanted to do the job, but there was others who they were there for the paycheck. They didn't really care, and when things seemed like it was going to get too tough or too dangerous, they would just walk away. And their military and our military are two different things. Like if you just walk away from the American military, you can be arrested and charged with different things. But over there, it's kind of just like come and go however you want. And it's if you feel like being there, great. If not, well, it's not that big of a deal. So I think that's we were dealing with a completely different dynamic there, because there's just that cultural difference, I guess, in the two militaries. But also when we were doing training with them, it was during the time of Ramadan, which, for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's a Muslim holiday where they fast during daylight hours, where they don't eat or drink anything. Of course, this was also in August in Afghanistan, and it's incredibly hot there. It could easily get over 120 degrees. So I can't really blame them for not really wanting to train during that time period, because they couldn't eat or drink anything.
Yeah, the timing wasn't great.
No, it definitely was not ideal for
and no
for
thank
what we were
you.
trying to do.
No thank you.
No, exactly. And it was hard enough when you could eat and drink during the day, but for them, and then if you tried to do anything at night, that's when they could eat and drink, and they didn't really want to take time away from that to go
of course.
and do military training. So
Yeah.
it was just a never-ending cycle of not being able to train with them. So but then we had to go out on missions with them. So we would go out, we'd fly out to a village, and then they would take the lead. I like to make the analogy of us being like the driver's ed instructor, where we were on the other side, where we had the pedal, we could pump the brakes if we needed to, but they were behind the wheel, and they were kind of taking charge of some of these missions. So they would go into these houses and they check for weapons and Taliban fighters and things like that. But they were moderately successful, I guess. We never really found too much. We never really found the people that we were looking for. Just every once in a while they come out with some uniforms or weapons or whatever and say, this was from the Taliban, and so we destroy those and then move on.
Not really effective, huh?
No, it wasn't the most effective, and unfortunately, that was just the orders that we were given, is like that. That's how we have to operate. This is their country, and they're going to have to learn how to drive on their own, if you will. And we're not going to be here forever, which obviously we're not. Despite it being a very long war, we aren't there forever, and we've left already, and unfortunately we all can tell how that ended up. Didn't end up all that well. So I kind of wish we did a better job training them and got them a little bit more focused. But again, it's just a cultural thing, and that's,
you can only do so much
to change that.
And they'll have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah,
they will. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So you did the best you could. If they didn't want to use it, then
exactly. And that's the thing, that we could only do so much, with the time and the resources that we had available. One of the things that, when you look back at previous wars that this country fought, World War II or Korea or whatever, the people who were deployed over there, they were sent over there until they were either seriously injured, killed, or the war was over. Like that was it. Like there was none of these.
Easier. It was easier. You could tell it was a clearly defined line between who is a soldier, who is a civilian, and what side you're on.
Right.
There's not that clearly defined line as there was in the past.
Yeah, that is very true. There were no Taliban uniforms that they wore.
Yes, exactly.
It was they're the bad guy if they start shooting at you. Otherwise, you don't know. And so that was a very hard thing to do. But World War II, you could tell the German soldiers because of the uniform that they're wearing. It was very easy to tell, and so that made things a little bit easier. I'm not saying that they had it easy over there at all, but it was definitely easier in that respect in terms of trying to identify who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and who's neutral or whatever. So
plus they weren't using women and children either, so
right. Ideally, you're going to have a much more clearly defined lines in terms of who you're fighting and everything, but yeah, that was just not the case that we experienced over there. So so that was I guess a little bit about my time in the military and my deployment over there to Afghanistan.
It's probably hard to summarize.
Going on.
I was gonna say it's probably hard to summarize 6 years because it doesn't sound like a long time, but it is, and with everything that you were doing, it really is. So no, you gave us a good taste of what you were up to.
Right. And
for sure.
I definitely can go on and on about different stories from different places, but I don't know how in depth you want to go with any of that. But
well, can you tell us what it was like leading up to the loss of your brother that day and stuff, what happened?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start with kind of what happened on his end, because it's really like two stories that took place. There's my side of the story, and then there's his side of the story, but his side kind of took place first. So I guess I'll start there. So his unit was out on a patrol in a village near their base. He was also in eastern Afghanistan as well, just not close enough where we ever would have seen each other, where we were located. So we were about 80 or 90 miles apart at the time, our two bases. And so, we never had the opportunity while we were over there to see each other. But so his unit was out on a patrol. It was a village that they had been to before. They fought there before. They knew the capabilities of the enemy that they were going up against. So they knew sort of what they were walking into. And so they started walking into this village, and the way the village was laid out, there's this hill that they kind of had to walk around, and then the village came out on the other side. And so some of their guys were up the hill, other guys were down lower, and some guys scattered in between, and they were just kind of walking around this hill. And as they came around, they basically walked into an ambush, and somehow the Taliban, I don't know if they were sitting there just waiting just because, or if they had intelligence saying that they were going to be coming into that village that day. I don't know exactly how that happened, but they walked into this ambush. So everyone scrambles for cover, trying to hide hide from the bullets and return fire as best as they can. And at that point, my brother turned around and went to go say something to some of the guys who were behind him, kind of up higher on the hill. And as he started to speak, his head kind of just jerked back, and then he slumped backwards on his pack. And so he was shot and killed pretty much instantly in that attack.
So sorry.
So that attack, that mission that they were on, went from in seeking out the Taliban and trying to get them out and capture or kill as many of them as they could, to a recovery mission where they had to recover my brother and bring him back out of there, because in the military there's the never leave a fallen soldier, and that's exactly what they did. They made it their mission to get him out of there. And so they did. They brought a few guys down. They had a kind of like a stretcher type of thing that they put him on, and had 4 guys on it carrying him out. So the hard part with that was they were still taking fire from the enemy at that point, and so they had to return fire with now 5 less people returning fire, because there's 4 people carrying my brother and then plus my brother, and so they have 5 less people now shooting back. In the process of evacuating my brother out of there, another soldier was killed as well, and so now they had 2 people that they had to carry out.
Oh my goodness.
So that's 8 people carrying plus 2 who were down. So that's 10 total people out of the, maybe, I'm just gonna ballpark numbers, say 35 or so people that they had to begin with. And so that's almost a third of their
their
firepower.
Yeah.
That was no longer shooting back, and meanwhile they're still under attack, so
Yeah.
it was incredibly difficult for them to evacuate those 2 out of there, and get the rest of them out of there without getting injured or killed as well. So there were several other injuries that day as well, but no other American deaths at least. So on their way, out of that village, they realized that they weren't going to go back out exactly the same way that they came in. And what they ended up doing was, there was a house that was built into the base of the hill that they were on. And so like the roof came up a portion of the hill. And so they decided that they were going to work their way down and use that house as kind of like a safe house, that they're going to clear the house of anyone who might have been in there, and at least those walls would provide them some protection from the enemy fire, and then they can maybe call in air support or something to help them out. And so as they started working their way down, the terrain over there in Afghanistan is a lot of loose rocks, very sharp, jagged rocks, and they were just sliding the whole way down. And so basically they had to slide the bodies down, slide themselves down all the way down. They got to the roof of this building, they cleared it of any occupants, and then they used that as their casualty collection point and kind of their safer area. At least they had some walls to protect them from the incoming fire. Eventually they had evacuated the 2 bodies out of there, and they ended up leaving that area as well. But it was all this that I just described took place over the course of hours.
Yeah.
And anyone who's ever been in a firefight knows that even seconds can feel like hours. Like just a short period of time of that intensity can just feel like it drags on forever. And I can only imagine what it was like for those guys to go through that over such a long period of time. It had to be incredibly difficult, especially after losing 2 of your friends over there. It's just a super hard thing to do.
For sure.
Hats off to them for being able to do that and recover them and bring them home, because that was, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. On your end, before you even knew, did you ever get a sense that something was wrong? Like, you hear people say that, but not everybody believes in that kind of thing. But did you ever get that type of sense that something was wrong or happening?
It would have been before he was killed. But so the mission that I was on, I'll go to the other side of the story now. We flew in under the cover of darkness at night. So like real early in the morning, it was maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when we flew into this village that we were on. And we kind of just set up on top of this mountain, and we were going to work our way down into this village at first light. Again, we were working with the Afghan army. They didn't have night vision capabilities, so they couldn't operate at night. And so we decided, okay, we'll just wait here until the sun comes up, and then we'll go down and we'll work our way into this village. It wasn't much of a surprise that we were there. We had big, loud helicopters landing us there, so it wasn't like we were getting any benefit by having the cover of darkness,
yeah,
to work under.
Unlike what the movies show, right?
Right. Yeah. The helicopters are extremely loud. We were not that far away from the village. They knew we were there. It's just a matter of where were we. They didn't know necessarily, but yeah, we're super loud. But while we were waiting for the sun to come up, it was just barely starting to come up. It was still dark, but like just in that in between time period. And I had this fleeting thought that came through my mind, and it was me just thinking about how, if one of us has to go, my brother or me, it's better that he goes and not me, because I have a wife and a kid at home, and he wasn't married, he didn't have any children or anything. And that thought just made me sick to my stomach. Like, why the hell would I think that? What would come over me to make me think something so disgusting?
Yeah. And this was what, like a day or so before the actual accident?
No, this was that morning.
That was same day? Okay. I wasn't sure. Day. Just curious.
Yeah. And so I was like,
you're like, ooh, shivers down your spine type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, why would I think something like that? Like, he's going to be fine. What would make me think that? And so it just got under my skin. Like, why would I do that? Why would I even think something like that? Like, I was kind of just disgusted with myself for even having that thought. But I was able to shake it off and kind of just move on and continue with my day and my mission that we were doing. We went down into this village just as planned. And at one point there was we got a call on the radio saying that we had a helicopter flying in, and there were some like VIP type people who were coming into this village, and we needed to secure a landing zone for them. So my squad went out and we found a flat area clear of any trees or anything else, and we secured that area for them, and we threw a smoke grenade to get them to show them where to land. And off the helicopter, we didn't know who was coming off, but there was an American general and 2 French soldiers, and at the time the Afghanistan was split up amongst the various NATO countries, and the region that we were operating in was one of the French regions. And so I guess they were there just to kind of check up on what we were doing and how we were operating and any intelligence we got and stuff like that. So at the time I was the highest ranking person near the general, so I was the one who was interacting with him. I was not all that high ranking, but so it was a little unnerving for me. But as soon as the next higher up guy came along, I was like, I handed him off to him, and I was like, okay.
You're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, so I threw him under the bus.
Oh God,
yeah.
I'm out.
But while I was standing there, the reason why I bring up this general, while I was standing there talking to him, he gets a call on the radio, and it's informing him that there were 2 American soldiers who were killed in a different part of the country. No names, or we don't typically use names over the radio, so there were no names going on there. They didn't use what unit or where they're from or anything like that. And so I hear this, and I, just like anyone else would think, it's like, this sucks. I feel bad for them. This is a sad situation, but never even once crossed my mind that this could have been even related to my brother. The entire time I was there, I never even entertain the thought that my brother could get injured or killed while we were over there. Just didn't even cross my mind. He's been to Iraq before. He knew what he was doing. He's going to be fine. It just was not even a concern for me. So of course, I didn't even think that this could have had anything to do with my brother. And then a little while later, as we're working our way back out of the village, I got a call on the radio from my commanding officer, and he's looking specifically for me, which again, I was not the highest ranking guy out there. And so usually there's a chain of command where if the commanding officer is looking for someone, they're going to work their way through the chain of command. But that was not the case here. And usually whenever that kind of situation happens, you either did something really good or
really bad,
totally screwed up. And I couldn't think of anything really good I did that day. So I was like, what the hell?
What did I do wrong?
What did I do? What did one of my guys do? Did they lose some equipment, like a scope on the rifle or something like, I don't know, whatever. What happened?
Yeah.
And I'm just racking my brain. I'm trying to figure it out, and I can't come up with anything.
And so it's not what you think.
No. So eventually I linked up with him, and he tells me that my brother's unit was ambushed and that he had gotten hit. And so in my head, again, I never entertained the possibility that he could have been killed. Now I'm finally coming to the realization that he's human and he could be injured. So I'm like, okay, well, he's hurt. So where is he? Get me to him. But does he need blood? Does he need an organ? How can I help him? Get me there. What's the logistics of getting a helicopter here to get me over to wherever he is? And let's make it happen. And I still didn't even consider the possibility that he could be killed. And so finally the commanding officer was like, no, he's been killed. He didn't make it. And it was just like a punch to the gut. Like, this can't be, this is my little brother. I couldn't believe it. But, like anyone else, I broke down. I was a sobbing mess. It was an ugly situation for me. But the grief that I had, that I was going through, was very short-lived, because maybe about 20 minutes later, our own unit started getting attacked from the village that we just came out of. So I had to put that grieving aside, and it very quickly turned to anger, because I got so angry at the people of Afghanistan, all of the people, not just the fighters or the soldiers or anybody. I got mad at all of them for not being able to take care of their own country and requiring people like my brother to come there and get killed. And I had a fleeting thought that I was like, I'm going to just run back down into this village and kill everybody I see, because I was that mad at everything that was going on in that country. And then I realized, like, a calm kind of came over me, and I realized that if I do that, there's no way I'm making it out of there alive. I'm going to get killed.
And then your parents are really going to have to go through the motions.
Yep, exactly. And I don't want my parents getting a second folded up flag, second knock on the door, second whatever you want to call it. I didn't want my wife to become a widow, or my newborn son to grow up without knowing his father. I didn't want any of that stuff. Then I also thought about the soldiers that I was in charge of. I had about 9 or 10 soldiers that I was in charge of, and I didn't want them to be without the leadership. I needed them to be positioned in certain ways so that they weren't going to get injured from a friendly fire kind of incident or whatever. And that was my job, to oversee all of that. And I don't know how I possibly could have looked their wives or their parents or their children in the eye and say, hey, your loved one's not here because I screwed up, and my head was in a screwed up place, and I couldn't do my job, and so that's why your loved one's not here. I couldn't do that to them. So I said, you know what? This sucks. I hate this situation that I'm in, but I got to deal with it. And I have to just go back to work and do my job. And I can't forget about what happened, but I have to just put it off. And I can't be this crazed mess that I am right now. I have to be able to focus. And that's what I did. And, we directed fire where it needed to be. And we were successful in repelling that attack. We didn't have anyone on our end get killed. We had a few slight injuries just from like rolled ankles on the terrain that were over there and things like that, but nothing from the enemy attacks. So after that attack, they managed to get me out of there pretty quickly. They got a helicopter in to take me off of that mountaintop, as well as a couple of the other guys who got injured. And it just so happened to be the same exact helicopter that I had landed at the bottom of that hill in the village earlier that day, because the same general was sitting directly opposite from me on the helicopter. And he looked at me like he recognized me. He said, "Weren't you the guy who was down there that, kind of helped us land the helicopter?" And I said, "Yeah, I was." And I said, the two guys that you talked about or that you heard about on the radio, one of them was my brother. And
Oh my gosh.
like the coincidence, like the oh shit coincidence just like came over his face. He's like, "I can't believe, that you were there when I got the news." And, unfortunately he didn't have any more details for me than what he had heard earlier. And I only came to find out his side of the story afterwards by reading some of the statements from the other soldiers who were there and talking to some of them as well, and finding out what had actually taken place that day. But it was just such a bizarre coincidence that that took place throughout that whole day.
That is. It's funny how the world gives us these weird little like quirky things.
It does. And when you get those, it sometimes you can write it off and just say, "Oh yeah, well, that's just a coincidence." But other times I feel like there's something else working there. There's something else at play, and not everyone believes that or whatever, and that's fine. But to me, I feel like it wasn't a coincidence that I was the one out of all the other squads that were there who could have gone and secured this landing zone. I was the one who was there. And I was the one who got to hear that message over the radio, and then it just seemed like it's not really
seems kind of bizarre afterwards. Like in the moment, it seems normal, and then afterwards, and you think about it, and it's like, whoa,
exactly.
Absolutely.
When you piece all those pieces back together, it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that all that happened.
Plus your thought from the morning, so it just kind of all pieced itself together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that thought from the morning, like even still to this day, I think about it and I'm like, oh my God, that was such a screwed up thing to think. But even still, I don't think that it was necessarily just me thinking that. I think there was something else going on. What it was, I don't know. But
it was like almost like a premonition, like you knew something was going to happen, and your thought was, well, this is what would be the best case scenario if something were to happen to one of us.
Right, exactly.
It's like you knew, in a weird way.
The other thing that was weird too is that my wife, so other side of the world, she was in Farmington, Connecticut, in our condo that we lived in, and she was there with our dog and our newborn son. And late at night, so it would have been late at night her time, but like during the day, our time over in Afghanistan. The day that my brother was killed, she had this sense that there was someone there in the house that was not normally there, but it was like a calm feling that she had. And
interesting.
She feels that it was like a I don't know if it was my brother's spirit coming just to check on them and say goodbye or see them one last time or something like that. But she just had this sense that there was someone there.
That's so crazy.
And it wasn't like the dog or the our son or anything like that. It was like a physical, like a person standing there. So
that's so crazy.
So a lot of these little things, exactly,
all the way around the world at about the right time.
It was
crazy.
Just at the right time.
Like any other time, you'd be like, "You're nuts," but it's like, well, but all of these things are all at the exact same time, and how do you explain it?
Right.
But that's another.
So how have you dealt with the loss of your brother, Stephen? And how are you still, I mean, I'm sure it's still with you, even all these years later. How are you still dealing with it?
When I first came home, I was not dealing with it very well at all. Like I said, I left that mountaintop they flew me out pretty much right after the firefight was over.
Yeah.
Within an hour or so, I was
Yeah.
gone.
So at the time, just before you continue, how old were you and how old were your brother?
So my brother was 25 and I was 28.
Okay.
So I flew out off that battlefield. They took me to Bagram Air Base, and the next morning I flew out of Afghanistan, and I was gone, and I never returned to Afghanistan. Fortunately, the flight that I was on, I managed to get on the same flight as my brother that was flying him out. So I was on the flight that took him out of there, and they have what's called a ramp ceremony where they bring the bodies of the fallen soldiers onto the plane. And I like to just make the analogy or equate it kind of to like a wake that you go to before a funeral, where there's a receiving line and people come through and pay their respects and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it was a very a big deal, because I felt like, it's not every day that a fallen soldier gets to have a member of their family there representing them, through this kind of thing where, high level, military and civilian people come through and pay their respects and everything. And to me, it was a very meaningful experience. But, going back to your question about, how I dealt with everything, I was basically plucked off the battlefield, and within a day and a half, 2 days, I was home. And there was no decompression time for me. Like there was no time to process what I had just gone through. I literally was just in a firefight, and then a couple days later I'm sleeping in my bed at home, and it's like none of that just made sense.
Yeah, you almost had like whiplash.
Yeah, it was a lot like that. It was kind of like mental whiplash, where you're just like, didn't have the
what's going on
opportunity to recover from that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't know how to deal with that. And so that was hard for me, coming home after that. And so I was doing all the wrong things. I was having trouble sleeping, because that's just what happens when you have high stress, high anxiety, high whatever. It's just hard to fall asleep. And so I'd wake up in the morning, after trying to I say wake up, I got out of bed in the morning after laying there for however many hours. I just drink coffee or energy drinks or whatever to get me going through the day, and that was okay for a little while. It kind of got me over that hump. But then it got to the point where I had to drink the coffee or energy drinks later and later in the day. And then that made it so I couldn't sleep again. And so then I was just getting into this vicious cycle where I just wasn't sleeping, and it just was really killing me. And so I started drinking it's like, if I can't fall asleep on my own, I'll just pass out, and then there you go. Now I'll sleep. Be able to sleep. And it has the added benefit of numbing that pain that I'm dealing with, and all the grief that I'm going through and everything. And now if I don't have to feel it, even better. But that didn't help anything either. That made things just that much worse. It made it that much harder to get up and go do my job. It made me a much angrier person. I was not a very nice person to be around at that time. I was getting angry at the littlest of things. Even we had a young child at home, and he would just do little kid things that are just completely normal for kids, and I would just flip out, and I'd be mad, and I'd be yelling. And this one time I talk about in the book that I wrote, where our dog was sick and she threw up on our bedroom carpet. It was a white carpet, and she was just inches away from the bathroom, which had tiled floor. And it would have been so much easier to clean up if she just puked in the bathroom. Right? And
I've had that happen to me before.
Yep, me too. I think all dog owners have.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We're right there.
It's just normal. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh my God, just like 2 inches, and I wouldn't have to go rent a steam cleaner and clean this whole thing up. But I was livid, and I was screaming, and I was irate, and it was like almost like an out of body experience. I was like, who the hell is this person? who's like, I'm yelling at a dog. Like, first off, she's not going to understand. Second off, she's sick, and that's not making her feel any better. And it's like, where is my head? Like, this is not who I want to be. And then I was noticing my son, I would do this thing where whenever I would get angry or frustrated, I would just kind of grit my teeth. And I noticed that my son started doing that too. And it was like looking in a mirror, like this ugly, disgusting mirror of myself saying, oh my God, like, this is my kid. I don't want him growing up this way. I don't want him growing up not knowing how to deal with, minor inconveniences in life, and just showing this angry frustration. And it's like, that's not who I want him to grow up to be. I want better for him. And so I said, you know what, my wife and I were like, something's got to change. And so I went to what's called the vet center. It's part of the VA, where they provide counseling services for anyone who's deployed overseas, as well as family members of those of the fallen soldiers. So, needless to say, I checked a few boxes to say I was qualified for their services. But I went there, and it was just talk therapy. We talked through what I was going through and what I was feeling, and I went there for a couple of years, and it seemed like it was helping. Like I wasn't getting angry quite as easily. I was sleeping better. I was dealing with things just a little bit better by just by going through and talking things out. And so around that time when I stopped going to there, it was right around the time when my family and I were moving out here to where we are now in Arizona. And I said, you know what, I think I'm good. Maybe another couple sessions would be beneficial, but you know what, I think I can probably deal without it, and I could probably manage on my own. And I was fine for a little while. But then I started to notice that I was slipping back in some of my old ways, where I get back into drinking and not sleeping and getting angry and frustrated, and all these things were just starting to come back. And it wasn't like a light switch where you just turn it on and boom, it's there. It was slowly, like a dimmer, like a slow dimmer that it, one thing would come back, and then like another thing, and then the next week something else, and then and then it was just like it started to really affect me again, and I was having more and more trouble. So a couple of years ago, I decided I need to go back and get some more help. This isn't a one and done kind of thing where like if you break your arm, you go to the doctor, you get a cast. After a few weeks, it heals. So take the cast off, boom, you're good. You don't need follow-ups on that. It's healed, it's done. But you're with what I found is with your mental health, it's a different story. You have a lot going on in your brain, and
it needs constant upkeep.
It's a little pampered diva sometimes.
Exactly.
Well, and it doesn't help that a lot of us ignore it until it reaches the point of dog yelling. So
right, exactly. And we get to the point where we say, we lie to ourselves and say, I can handle this. I can tough it out. Maybe this is hard right now, but I'll suck it up. I'll be a man. I'll deal with it. Whatever. Yeah. And that's just not the right way to go. We have so many incredible resources that are available to us, and we just don't use them. We think that we can just handle all this stuff on our own.
Well, we put that stigma on men too, where we say that men don't, suck it up.
Not allowed to cry. Yeah.
Yeah. No crying. Men. Yeah, like it's for so long, it was given this stigma that they had to be this big tough guy all the time. And it's like, just because you need some help doesn't mean you're not the big tough guy.
No, exactly. And, one of the things that one of the guests on my podcast actually said, and I'm going to not say it as well as he did, but, when, you talk about the guys and having this stigma and this macho-ness or whatever, and
especially military guys.
In the military, right? So you go in the military, you go to the gym, you work out, you take care of your body. It's not saying that you're a weak person and you need this extra help in order to become this strong person. Well, I mean, yes, you do. You need to go and do that, but it's not like you're this feeble old person who can't do anything. Like, you need to work on your body in order to get it into that peak physical condition.
Yeah.
In order to do the job that's asked for you. Carrying the heavy weight, the equipment, the body armor, the weapons, the ammunition, and everything else that you got to carry. That requires a strong physical body. And we have a lot of mental baggage that we have to carry around too. Especially the people who've deployed overseas and have seen combat. But even if you haven't seen combat, just being overseas, you're constantly having your head on a swivel, looking around, looking for those threats that are going to pop out at you. And so that takes its emotional toll on you as well. But even worse, if you've seen a close friend or a family member get killed, or even the enemy, having to kill somebody, or whatever, like this, it does take its toll on you, and it's a heavy emotional baggage, and you need to be able to offload some of that stuff. You can't carry all that stuff around with you all the time. And so that's what I found with going to the therapy and talking to someone, is I was able to, with the very first phone call that I made before I even went to any sort of therapy, just making that phone call and making the appointment, it let me realize that I don't have to carry all of this on my own. I still have some work to do, but there's someone out there who's going to help me with this. Mm-hmm. And maybe, I'm still carrying it around, but I'm carrying it in a more efficient way. Yeah. They're showing me a better way to deal with all of this stuff.
They're making you mentally
not have
strong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what the guest that I had on my podcast, what he was saying is that if he's not mentally strong, all of the physical strength won't matter, because he won't be able to be a good leader for his soldiers and be able to take care of him, or take care of them, and do the things that he needs to do. And he said, after he went and got the treatment that he got, he became so much better of a soldier, of a leader, of a friend, of a fill in the blank of whatever relationship he had at the time. Like, he just became a better person overall, because he was able to deal with the stuff that he was going through in a much healthier way than what he had been doing before. And I think it's a shame that we have that stigma that we were just talking about, but I think we're doing work to help eliminate that stigma and make it okay for people to go and get help. And that's one of the things that this guy said too, is that he wanted everybody, all of his soldiers, he wanted them to know that he was going to get help, so that they knew it was okay to get help too if they needed it, because he wanted them to be the best soldiers that they could be, and be the best whatever that they could be, because if you're not operating at that peak level, then you're slowing yourself and everybody else down.
Absolutely.
So with your therapy, and I've seen on your Instagram, because I'm totally a stalker, because that's what we do, is we research for when we have people on as guests. You paint and you do some art. Is that part of your coping mechanism to help you deal?
Yeah. So there's a few paintings on the wall back here that I've done, and I never was really an artist. I think before I started doing this type of stuff, I think the last time I picked up a paintbrush was in middle school or something. I just never really was into it. But I had a friend who I served with, and he told me about how he got into painting, and he took a few lessons and he was hooked, and he just started painting away all these different landscapes and all these different beautiful paintings that he's done. And he's actually won a few awards and had them entered into different competitions and stuff. And he told me about it, and he said it's not about winning awards or, going into, anything competitive or even having anyone buy your artwork. It's not about any of that kind of stuff. It's about just kind of like grounding yourself and getting focused on the present moment and not being so worried about things to come or things that happened in the past or whatever, and just kind of focusing on the moment. And my wife, I did a painting a few months ago where I was doing it with my children. We were sitting at the kitchen counter, and we had, I had one of them on either side of me, and I was in the middle. And my older son was too cool for that, so he didn't want to join us.
Of course, he's too cool for school,
Yeah, exactly. So, so it was the three of us sitting there at the kitchen counter, and I was like walking them through the steps of like what to do to do this kind of painting that we were doing. And afterwards, my wife came to me and she said, you actually looked really happy while you're doing that.
Aw.
And I was like, I didn't even think about it, but I was like, I am. This whole process made me really happy. It was something I enjoy doing, and it's something I was able to pass on to my kids and do that with them and show them, how to, appreciate the process, not necessarily the outcome. I didn't care if, the painting came out great or not or whatever. It's just more of the process and just trying to enjoy that. So that's something that I do from time to time. I actually have, kind of set up here in my office off to the side. You can't really see right now because it's a disaster. But I have it set up so that way when I'm working, I'm struggling with something and it's really getting to me and I'm just not having a good day or whatever, I'll just stop and take a half hour or 45 minutes or something and just start painting something. I may not finish it or whatever, but it's just going through the motion and going through that process and getting myself kind of refocused and recentered and grounded in this moment, and not having my head spin in 1,000 different directions like sometimes it does. And it really helps. Sometimes I have these experiences where it's kind of like the flashbacks that you'll see in the movies or whatever, but I'll have those situations too, and I have to actually fight and work to get back into this kind of present moment and not be focusing on what had happened in the past. And so I'll just sit down and just start painting something, whether it's about what I was thinking about or not, it doesn't matter. It's just painting something. And some of them I think are pretty good. Some of them come out like crap, and that's fine. I just paint over them and try something else, but
Bob Ross would be proud.
We actually joke because the friend that I was talking about who kind of introduced me to painting, the first class that he took was taught by someone who went to I guess some like Bob Ross school of painting or something, and so this guy was like, well, I watched Bob Ross growing up, and I want to paint like him. Like he was awesome. Like he
paint a little tree, little happy tree,
happy little tree.
Effortless, and it was just like the greatest thing. So I was like, hell yeah, I want to do this, and and so that's what got him into it, so my wife and kids joke around that I'm like the Bob Ross of the family, and I need to grow the big afro kind of hair too.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I think he's actually still on Netflix, because I'll turn it on time to time just because it's calming. It's calming just to listen to him.
It is.
And a funny story about him. Apparently, he was in the Air Force, and apparently when he was this real hard ass. Like he was, the kind of guy who would be like screaming down your throat, and he was
drill sergeant type.
Drill sergeant type person. But then when he got out, he was like, this is a story that I heard anyways. I don't know how true it is, but he got out and he was like, I don't need to be this kind of person. I don't need to have my blood pressure shooting through the roof. I can just be this calm, nice person.
He said he never wanted to yell again.
Yeah.
After he got out.
I don't think he ever did. Like even no matter what, like whatever he was going through, he was just like, you know what, we'll just make this
a happy little
something
treat.
else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a happy little mistake, we'll just deal with that.
Exactly.
So you got creative with art, and then you got creative and you wrote a book. So tell us about your book and what it was like writing it and where our listeners can find it.
Yeah. So the book actually started off probably shortly after I got back from Afghanistan. It was definitely not in a book format or anything like that. I just started journaling and writing down stuff that I remembered.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, was it like a blog or a journal? And then you said it. So
yeah. So it wasn't like public. It wasn't like a blog or anything like that. It was just, I had
it was for you.
It was for me and for my kids. At the time I only had the one kid, but I knew at some point he was going to grow up, and like curious kids do, they want to know about what dad did in the military. He's going to know that I was in the war and what happened to his uncle and things like that. So I knew that our minds play tricks on us, and over time our memories fade and stuff like that. So I didn't want to lose my memory of what had happened. I wanted to remember it as best as I can. So I figured, as close as I am to this right now, time wise, let me just write down as much as I can. And I had a lot of notes, probably a good 90 to 100 pages of notes of just stuff that had happened in no particular order, no particular format. It was just notes. And so a couple of years ago, I looked back at the notes and I was like, you know what, this should be more than just notes. I should tell this story in a more public way. And the reason why I did it is there's several reasons, but when I first got back from Afghanistan, I landed, in Connecticut, and we went straight to my parents' house where a lot of our family was just kind of gathered there. And lined up outside my parents' house were news vans all up and down the street. Every local television, news, newspaper, radio station, they all had their people there waiting for an interview. And at first I was like, screw that. I am not talking to these people. These people are just here like vultures trying to pick apart every little piece of the story and everything. And I was like, get them out of here. But then the thought occurred to me that they're going to run a story one way or the other, whether they talk to me or not, whether they talk to my parents or anybody else or not. They'll probably go get a soundbite from some random person in a grocery store parking lot
who's never even met your family.
Never even met my family. And of course, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, it's a tragedy. It's sad, yada, yada, yada. It'll be a 30-second story and it would be over. And then we'd never, the story would be closed and that would be it. We'd never have another word about it mentioned anywhere. And so I was like, okay, well, I can't have that either. My brother's no longer here to tell his story. And who better to tell his story than us, his family, the people who knew him the best. Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted to do with this book was not only tell my side of the story, but what happened while I was in Afghanistan, what I experienced, which I did want to tell that side, but I also wanted to continue telling my brother's story, who he was before he joined the military, growing up. We talk about all that kind of stuff. And, we talk about, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today on the show, and and how I dealt with things after coming back home. And the hope for me is, first and foremost, I want to tell my brother's story and make sure that his story outlives all of us. And what better way to do that than by writing a book and having that book be published and get that out there. And so I know for sure it'll outlive me and maybe my kids, and who knows how long that story will be out there. But I also wanted to help other people, help the veterans who might be out there to learn from my mistakes, the things I was talking about, drinking too much, not sleeping enough, all that kind of stuff, and realize that there's healthy ways to deal with the problems that you might be dealing with. You don't have to go through it alone. It's okay to go and get help, all that kind of stuff. I hope that the veterans who are reading this book, or even the family members of people who might be lost, I hope they realize that there are definitely ways out there. There are people out there willing to help you to get the help that you need. But I also hope that the other people who maybe never served in the military learn about the sacrifices that we make and that our families make and our communities make, and learn that it's not just another name on the news. There's a real family behind these people who you might hear about. It's a thing that we might get into the habit of, maybe as a defense mechanism, where we just say, this is something that just happens to other people. But it's not. It's other people until it becomes your family and it becomes your people. So it's definitely something that can happen to anybody, and so I think it's important for us to really understand what those sacrifices really are. So and the book is available on Amazon. It's in Kindle and print formats, so however you like to read the book, it should be there for you. I really do hope that people will go out and pick up a copy. Again, the book is Surviving Son, and take a look at it. And it's obviously, yes, I want people to buy the book because I make money on the book, but it's not like I'm getting rich off of this anyways. But I what I want is people to take away the sacrifices that are made and the lessons that can be learned from all of this, and I hope that people take away some good things from it. It's not the easiest read in terms of the emotional roller coaster that you might go on, but there's nothing too crazy that if you got through this episode of this podcast, you probably can get through the book as well. Although I will say, for anyone who hasn't read the book and doesn't really know this story, if you read the book, you'll never look at bubblegum the same way. And I won't say any more than that.
Well, I don't want to read now. I'm not going to be able to read bubblegum.
I wonder if it has anything to do with MREs.
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
Okay, then now I'm really interested.
So now I left that little teaser out there, and now you'll have to read the book to find out.
I can't. I like bubblegum. I'm just kidding. I can't actually remember the last time I've eaten bubblegum, so I guess I would be safe.
Okay.
So do you have anything else to add, Scott?
Yeah, I really hope that the people who are listening, your audience, I hope that they recognize that there is this stigma that's out there with mental health, and it's unfortunate that it exists. but we are working to get rid of it, and to get rid of that stigma, so that we can get the help that we need. And
am I the only one who feels like 2020 is part of the reason why there's been like a less stigma against it, or is it just me?
I think you're probably not too far off, because I think with all the lockdowns that we had last year and all the, it just seems like bizarro world sometimes when you look at the news, and,
it does.
Oh my God, for
and
sure.
when you are going through that, people are definitely needing the mental health treatments. When you're isolated for months at a time, from your coworkers, from neighbors and family, and things like that.
Now
it's just hard to deal with, and so I feel like 2020 definitely opened up a lot of people's eyes to the fact that there are things that need to be taken care of and taken seriously, and if that's what it takes for us to kind of overcome that stigma, then so be it. And I'm glad it happened, but
and keep going.
Because
there's still a long way off.
I know there's a lot of work to do. So I guess what I want people to kind of take away from all of this is know that if you're not going through something in your own life, if you're not dealing with whatever, someone else in your life might be, and you might be able to kind of just encourage them to get the help that they need, or just be the shoulder to cry on, or the ear that can listen to whatever they're going through, and just be compassionate about whatever it is that they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, in the show notes, we will have links to both Scott's book and his podcast, and any other good links that we'll have on there so you can get in touch with him.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And it's been awesome talking with you, Scott. Thank you for coming onto our show. And this is How to Deal When Shit Gets Real, guys. Don't forget to listen to us every Friday and, rate, review, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next episode.